Hey everybody, this is Curtis from PSN Stores. Today we're looking at Slender the Arrival. This is the PS4 version. Last year the PS3 version came out. I never played that one. Finished this game a couple days ago. It's about, I think it took me a little over 90 minutes. It's not very long. This is of course built upon, like, if you remember a few years back, there was the Slender game that it was like, hey, you're in these woods and you have to find 8 notes, and you have to do that while avoiding Slender Man. This game is built around that. They've kind of taken that portion of gameplay, kind of stuck it in the middle, and then built a larger game around it, and kind of fleshed out a story, added some different things, different elements to it to make it more of a game. So here you are. You were playing as I don't remember her name, but basically your friend has vanished, and so you've come to investigate and see what has happened. Your friend Kate. So you've got this like recording overlay. You can actually turn it off. If you press the touchpad. So if you don't want that overlay, you don't need it. But controls are, pretty simple. You're walking around. You can run. You can only run for a few seconds. And then you can look at like letters and items that are in the environment. So this video, we're probably not going to see too much. I mean, I think we might get a couple glimpses at good old Slendy. Maybe towards the end of this video. But I just wanted to kind of show the opening. I think the opening's done pretty well. Like, my issues with this game are more the 8 letters part of the game. Like, you can tell that like that was made and then they built a game around it. It feels kind of out of place, and I think there's another area later on where you have to find a set number of things. Yeah. There's like there's an area not too far after that where you have to like activate like 6 generators or something, and you're just in an open area. And those two things kind of feel out of place in a way. Like, I don't know. I didn't really care for that stuff too much. But I'm a fan of Slender Man. I think that one, it's just a really interesting story of how he was created and just where he, like, how it came about, and I was a huge fan of like the Marble Hornets YouTube series of videos that you may have seen. It was a few years ago, like right kind of. I don't. It wasn't that much. It wasn't that long after Slender Man first kind of was created that those videos came up, and those were like really well done, and they were like super freaky and just weird. But I always thought that just the concept of this mysterious figure, like kind of very human, but also like just the way he was tall and like the super skinny arms that were way too long, and kind of just the appearance of him, of being not quite normal. I always thought that was like kind of very, and just the child aspect of it, of him like kidnapping kids and stuff. I always thought it was done really well, as far as like a horror aspect is concerned. Just in the way that like that's super creepy. Like that is it. I think we are in times where horror can be kind of hard to do, and there's an element of like, well, we've seen that before, and sure, we've seen things similar to this, but I always found Slenderman to be like genuinely creepy. I think this game captures that stuff pretty well in a lot of cases. So I've got a flashlight now. I can actually like focus it. There's some stuff later on that I can like focus the slide on. But right now we're just exploring this house, and there's items you can pick, or like little like papers and pamphlets and stuff you can pick up and look at. So you notice here, it's like, well, okay, you know, something was going on. They add it to your scrapbook. You can't view it until you go back to the main menu. It's a little weird. I can go here and play piano. Look at the windows. All sorts of things. So, as you progress, obviously the threat of Slenderman becomes more apparent. Pretty sure he actually shows up outside of one of these windows at some point. But yeah, this game is very much like, hey, this is weird. Like, you know, and again, you know, it's the thing where I think it's because I kind of found out about all this stuff through the Marble Hornets series of videos. That like every time, because I feel like a staple of Slenderman is one, his appearance, but mainly like, you know, you see these things and it's like, oh, here's this weird like scribbling on the walls, and it's like these trees and it's these figures, and like all those things were things that and like the X with the circle around it, and like those are things that maybe came from something else, but like I saw those first with Marble Hornets, and so that's just what I attribute it to now. Which I've mentioned it, you know, like a handful of times already. If you haven't seen those videos, they're really well done. I thought this was cool. I thought this was just a nice work of art. Like, I feel like they made that and were like, we should put that somewhere. It looks cool. My first playthrough, I looked at one of these windows and I saw him. And like the camera got like all staticky for a second. I don't know if we'll see him again. Ah, he can ignore our dog. Oh, there was some static there. So I need a key. I can't remember where I found the key at. Here we go. I do kind of like that, you know, if you have the recording stuff on, like you see her in real time, like how long you've been playing. Or I think it's somewhat accurate. It might not be completely accurate, but it's definitely, yeah. It's at least pretty close. So you got some more of this good stuff. And again, I think it may be like we've reached a point now where there's a lot of like people doing their own Slenderman stuff and their own stories and stuff, and they all follow a very, very similar premise, and this is no exception. Like if you're familiar with this stuff, like you should know kind of what to expect from the story in this game and where it's gonna go. Not that that's a bad thing at all. There was a few things in here that I was like, that was not what I was expecting. I don't want to spoil it. So if you go down that slide, that's a trophy. And let's go out here. There's a point coming up where I think they do some very good subtle things. So I don't think you can die in this opening part here, but there are definitely points where you need to be careful, because if you run into Slenderman, he will or Slenderman, he'll take you down. And he does have the knack of just kind of appearing out of nowhere sometimes, so you got to be pretty careful about that. This is also a game where you will reach areas that it is incredibly hard to see. You see, like, the flashlight only covers mostly like the center of the screen, so a lot of the edges, like, will at points will just be completely black. Also, this is... So I wonder... this, you know, I've only played through it once so far. And I kind of want to play through a second time before I do the review. For things like this, because, and again, like I mentioned before, my first playthrough, I actually saw him outside the window. And also, he was... You could see his figure up on that hill, just kind of standing there. And you could see that a couple times in this segment, and I thought it was cool. Just as something, because it didn't draw attention to it, and it's something because he kind of blended well into the trees, which is, you know, the point. So it was something that you could easily just miss. And, oh, there he is. And then he's gone. It's a good, like, you see it and like, well, wait a minute, what? But they don't draw attention to it, they don't, there's not like a thing where it's like, oh, hey, look at that, that's weird, right? Like, he's just there. And that was always, like, that's one of the reasons why I find him to be just such a creepy concept. Like, there's something, and it's one of those things, because we've all, like, you get the feeling of you're being watched, and that's scary. So it preys on, like, very real feelings that people have, that I've always found to be a lot scarier than, like, oh, there's a guy with an axe. It's like, yep, that's it. Yeah, well, I mean, that happens, but yeah, you know, like. All right, so there's this house over here. So a lot of the story here is, you know, you have your friend that's missing, and it turns out maybe there's something bigger at play. Maybe she was seeing things, or maybe she was privy to information she wasn't supposed to know. In building a game and story around that 8 letters concept, they also introduce a family, and that family had a son, which is this fine boy here, Charlie, who seemed to know some things he wasn't supposed to know. So his location was also different. I know the segment with the 8 letters. I know that those are, every playthrough, those are in different locations. So I'm kind of curious to know, like, just how different each playthrough is. At least the locations of things like that seems to be pretty different each time. Apparently, you can run into him multiple times in this house. And there was a letter I saw in here. I don't see it. So you see a farm. There's a flash of a family there. Definitely a lot of screen effects of like distorted cameras and all sorts of good stuff. So I'm pretty sure there's like a note that explains a couple things. I think it's in this room. There it is. This is written by Charles, which I believe is the father of this family. Mentions Charlie disappearing, Diane, who I believe would be his wife, leaving. There's things going downhill. Which is definitely something you can expect from this. So I believe, yeah, I go up here. And this will lead into, I think the 8-letter segment is right up here. So again, yeah, this game can be finished in like about an hour and a half. I think it really depends on this segment upcoming here, because like the 8 letters is in just this wide open wooded area. They're always in different places. There's like different landmarks scattered around. It's easy to find yourself running in circles a lot. And it's something that like I was on 7 of the 8 letters and was just stuck for a good 10 minutes because I could not figure out where the last one was. So like if you manage to finish it quickly, you know, that definitely became a big portion of my playtime. So I'll play just a few minutes more just so we can actually get a glimpse of the guy that this game is named after. I was expecting to see him, I mean, other than the shadow on the hill, I was expecting actually to see him in the house, or outside the house. Yeah, so already this is pretty different. It seems like the place you enter is always different. Like the portion of the woods that you enter in through is different. This was a landmark that I did not see on my first playthrough. Usually, if it's a landmark, you can count on there being a letter there. I'm not seeing anything on this one, though. So like I said, when you get to these darker areas, this is definitely a lot harder to see, even if you have your flashlight. I imagine that's a very much an intended effect for them. So this Oakside Park Information Center, if this is like the first playthrough, I think this is supposed to always be like in the center of the park. I could be wrong. This is a bit more open. I know there's a letter in here somewhere. So there's one. You don't get to look at them. They might show up in your scrapbook. So the thing is, Slenderman doesn't chase after you, not in the way that maybe other enemies of horror games would. Alright, this is definitely not in the center. So there he is. There's our friend. Let's go say hi to him. All right. Um, but yeah, he doesn't chase after you. If you see him, you can kind of turn around and run the other way. Sometimes he might appear before you if you try running. But usually, whenever you see him, typically you have enough time to get away. But that is Slenderman: The Arrival. It is out now on PS4. It's $10. If you have PlayStation Plus, I believe it's discounted a couple bucks, so it's a little bit cheaper if you have it that way. It's pretty neat. Like I think if you are interested in, or if you're fascinated like I am with Slenderman, it's worth checking out. Like it's only 90 minutes long, so it's pretty short. You do unlock some new difficulty modes, and after you beat it, you unlock the Genesis level, which I think is just straight up the original 8 pages game. And I think it might be a bit harder as well. But it's pretty neat, and if you did play the original like game, it's cool to go back and see them having built a story around it. Again, I think it's like that part does kind of feel out of place because it's like, well, like the rest of it feels like pretty cool, and like then there's this part where it's like, oh, this is weird. But other than that, like I like it. Um, I think it captures some of the essence of Slenderman pretty well. And other than that, it's a neat little experience. So that's all I got. Thanks for watching this video. I'm hoping to have a review written up pretty soon. But until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.